Next, a new study financed by the International Olympic Committee found that transgender female athletes showed greater hand grip strength, an indicator of overall muscle strength, but lower jumping ability, lung function and relative cardiovascular fitness compared with women whose gender was assigned female at birth.
No woman was assigned their gender at birth. Right. OK, it happened at conception when sperm met egg. Fact. OK, so let me get there. However, this is a little bit of a nonsense study.
Is it?
Because
why?
What they did is they didn't compare elite athletes for lots of this study. We already know that when you go through puberty, your lungs and heart as a man, JJ, are bigger than mine, and they always will be. If you take testosterone blockers tomorrow, your heart and lungs are not going to shrink.
They're not. But let's go to teacher and transgender commentator Debbie Hayton, who joins me now. Debbie, I don't know if you just heard what Dr. Renee was saying. When I read these headlines, the first thing I thought was, oh, trans athletes are stronger than women. Also in the news, water is wet. Isn't that just obvious?
Well, it is, yes. And cheetahs can run faster than tortoises. Yes. It's this sort of level of research that... The problem has become is that the burden of proof was shifted somewhere in the past. The burden of proof should surely be on people who come up with this crazy idea that men are the same as women, and the only differences come from the testosterone that happens to be going in your blood at the moment. That's nonsense, and people have been able to get away with that nonsense. We should come back to the reality that there are two sexes, and one tends to be bigger, stronger, and faster than the other. And because of that, women's sports need to be protected and kept separate.
So one of the things in this study, it said transgender athletes have lower jumping ability, lung function and relative cardiovascular fitness compared with women whose gender, well, who are born women. Is that correctly? Yes. Which I contest, because with my own eyes, I have watched trans athletes compete against women and they are destroying the field. And those same trans athletes, when they competed as men, were average at best. If you look at Flojo, the fastest woman of all time across the 100-metre sprints, she's had that record since the late 80s, I believe. It's not been broken since then. If you ranked her against all the men who've run the 100 metres, she ranks at around 7,500. Against men who have never made it to an Olympic final, they are faster than her. Men who've never competed in the World Athletics are faster than Flojo. So I'm confused how this study can push out these facts when we all see with our own eyes the effects of trans athletes competing against women.
Yes, and the burden of proof is on anybody to say otherwise. And we can see it. We've seen trans athletes just go straight past women, run faster and jump higher and throw heavier weights. This is self-evident. We have known this. And for studies to come out and prove anything different, either they're being selective, their basis of their research is not controlled, cherry-picking information perhaps, but it's not acceptable to by some study to say that because of this we can say that it's okay. It's not okay, because male and female are different, and that is the reason why we have separation in sports.
That's exactly the point, isn't it, Dr. Renee? That's it. The reason we have to have men and women competing separately in the first place is because men would dominate completely.
Well, there would be. I mean, I think you made a brilliant point. Serena Williams, at the height of her success, when many people said she was like a man, didn't they?
She was muscly. I wouldn't say many, but some did.
Lots of people did. They criticised her. If you'd have slotted her into the men's rankings, she would have been no higher than 700, you know, because she's a woman. Sharon Davis has demonstrated this beautifully, that I think at 14-year-old schoolboys can break almost every women's athletic record. Wow. Elite women's athletic.
Yeah.
You know, this is a silly study. We know what puberty does, and it's not just puberty. My daughter told me when she was 3 that she wouldn't win at her sports day because she had to run against boys. They're faster, their motor coordination is better. They then go through puberty, their bones are longer, stronger, their lungs are bigger, their heart, their muscles, and that is an advantage that can never be lost.
Debbie, how do we stop the spread of misinformation and studies like this putting forward scientifically commissioned studies that anyone with their own eyes, anyone with a brain, would clearly contest?
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? Because people with their own eyes are going to contest this. And studies only say what the study has actually found out, and if it's been biased or looking to cherry pick results, it's useless. What the end result is that human beings can watch other human beings run races, and when men transition and run against women, it takes three things. One, that the crowd need to recognise this and show their appreciation accordingly. Secondly, and this is hard for the female campaigners. So this is hard for the female competitors. Is not to run in those races. But that's hard. But thirdly, it comes down to the sports governing bodies to grow a backbone and do what is right. They know what is right, and to hide behind some flawed study is not acceptable.
Yeah, Dr. Renee, when and I've seen this argument before when women are saying, I'm not going to compete in this race or in this combat because there's a trans woman who I'll be competing against. But ultimately, it's the woman who is then penalised.
Of course, and she loses, in America, she loses her sponsorship opportunities, the chance to move up to the next level, money opportunities. Look, I agree with this letter that we saw today, that all people should be able to participate in sport. It's good for your mental health, it's good for your physical health. We can do that. We have a man's category, a women's category, and a trans category. It's quite simple. And then the trans athletes, of whatever type they are, can choose where they want to compete, in the trans category or with their original male sex. And then that way everyone can compete. You don't get to just discard women because you want to win. That's otherwise called cheating, by the way.
Debbie, it's quite telling, I think, that the majority of elite female athletes support the categorisation of women's sport by biological sex rather than what you identify as. But in athletes who compete in non-Olympic sports, so basically any amateur, thinks that you should be able to change category. So the people who compete at the highest level think it should be male and female. It's everyone else, I say everyone else, it's a lot of people who aren't in the elite part of sport who are saying, oh, it doesn't matter where you compete.
Well, it does, and it matters at every level. This is fairness we're talking about here. This is not just at the elite; it's at every single level. And Dr. Renee is right. Nobody's banning trans people from sport. What they're saying is we should compete in our own biological category. And as far as I'm concerned, my sporting prowess is very limited. But there are men to beat, even at my level, and I will enjoy beating them.
Debbie, Hayton, thank you very much for your time. An absolute pleasure speaking to you. Dr. Renee.
I think it's really interesting, that point you just read, that people not in elite sports. And you know why that is, JJ? So women are compassionate, more compassionate and empathetic than men by nature. They're mothers, that's what happens. And this whole thing has been sold on be kind.
Yeah.
So it's kind to say, oh, do you know what?
You can
let them. But I can tell you what, those college girls who are not at elite level, who are standing on the third podium watching two men take their medals, inside, they don't think that those men should be there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Renee.